Wonderful. Celeb Savant, Barrett Edelstein. We're at Solid Gold Podcast in Johannesburg, South Africa. And joining me today, we have got Johnny Clegg.
Thank you, man. Great to be here.
Yes, it's been a determination of mine to get you on the show, so I'm very grateful that you're here. So thank you very much.
Thank you for having me, man. It's great to finally be here.
Yes. So, Jesse, let's rewind. At what age, whether it's a child or teenager, did you think, cool, you want to be in the creative world, the creative space? And how did that journey progress to where we are today?
Well, music was so omnipotent in my household, obviously.
Naturally.
My dad was a professional musician touring 6 to 9 months of the year. So from birth, basically, I was just, I just got to see and feel and hear so much music and the life that unfolds as a musician. I was kind of a passenger on that. So, it's always been part of my life, and it was very inspiring growing up in that environment. I got to see different places in the world and travel and hear music in different languages and different cultures, and it was just such a portal to new experiences and new feelings and new things. And so I think that it's always been a love of mine. I was singing and dancing from, when I was a baby, basically. I also I think, growing up in that, you also get to see like the sort of unglamorous side, like the discipline. And, my dad was away for many, many months. And, I also got to see the challenges of being a lifelong artist. So I was like, I loved music and I didn't feel immediately confident that I was going to be a musician. I think it was really when I started like writing music, like probably like early teens, that I like picked up guitar and I wasn't just playing covers of other people's songs. I was actually like writing my own music, and I realized that this is more than just a way to access the music that I love and the artists that I love. This is actually a language that I can learn how to speak. And once I started doing that, something unlocked for me, and I had the feeling that like I would always be writing songs, whether I was going to be a professional musician or not. I didn't know, but I always had this feeling that like this was going to be a part of my life. So yeah, I'd say like that kind of time, like 12, 13, I really like fell in love with it.
Okay, so you said that you observed the challenges that, of your father being a lifelong performer. So for the listeners who do not know, who think it's just glamorous and or sparkly lights and glitter balls or whatever, what challenges are there that people don't necessarily know about?
I think, obviously there's so much traveling, and traveling sounds great on paper.
Yes.
But when you're traveling for tour or for music or for any kind of work, really, you're not traveling to experience the place necessarily. You're traveling, like I've been to so many different countries, and I've traveled America, I've traveled Europe, but I don't feel like I've really seen those places. I've seen the venue and the street that the venue's on.
Yes.
Like that's my experience. And then the audience, the audience is really your deepest sort of cultural experience of a place. But it's long periods away from home. There's also the challenge of like constantly trying to create and do something new. And every time I release a song, every time I write something and put it out, there's this, it's a piece of yourself, and there's this vulnerability and there's this emotional weight that you attach to it. And that can be quite a sort of stormy experience, there's so much of the music that songwriters write is deeply connected to their own life and memories and emotions. And so, you're mining through that and then you're putting it out in the world and hoping for the best. So there's a sort of a thick skin that you have to develop, and that can be quite tough. And also just like, it's an industry, it's a business, there's lots of business interests involved. There's lots of pitfalls that you can fall into. There's lots of things that are pulling your attention away from the love that you have for your music or the love that you have for performing or whatever, and just finding a way to balance all those things, travel, business, art, those three things have to kind of all be in place in a very specific kind of way to make it sustainable.
And life outside of it.
Exactly.
That's the fourth piece of the puzzle.
Yeah.
Okay, so you referenced that you were a teen when you started writing, and you knew that would be part of your life. When was the transition to know, okay, now I'm going to travel this path of becoming professional in it? And how did those steps happen?
I started writing when I was like 12, 13, and I basically was just writing music that I felt connected to. It wasn't something that I really intended to release, or there was no like thought about this is going to be my first album, or this is like my I was just writing music. And then when I was I did that for like 3-4 years, played a few gigs with high school bands, and I just kind of like immersed myself in music as much as I could during high school. And eventually I kind of plucked up the courage to like play the music for like friends and family and stuff. And my dad and my friends and like some musician people in my life like were really impressed with some of the stuff that I'd written. So I ended up going to a little studio with my sound engineer, Vernie Skoltz, who's been with me since the beginning, literally. And I recorded these little acoustic guitar demos where I just like kind of played acoustic guitar and I sang into the mic and put a little song idea down. Anyway, long story short, like those demos found their way to David Gresham Records, who then ended up signing me based on those demos, and I went back into studio, and first time ever with like a proper producer and a proper studio, and a house band of musicians, and we like really made the songs come to life, and that album did really well for me, and it was all a very like surprising and inspiring and kind of terrifying experience, because I was so fresh, man. I didn't really know anything at that point. I mean, I'd obviously seen my dad, but I've never been in that position, and so it happened quite fast for me. And that first album went platinum, within like 2 years. It was like a really big album. I still wasn't 100% sure if I was going to be a musician, even throughout that whole process. So I ended up doing a BA law degree and an honors degree in English literature.
Oh,
wow. while doing that album and the album after that, yeah. So I still had backup plans.
Okay, so understanding your dad, Johnny, for the listeners, Johnny Clegg, JC's dad, being in the industry, was there any resistance from your side to actually play those songs initially to the friends and family? You were like, ooh, was there any sort of imposter syndrome? Will this be good enough? Will there be comparisons? Was any of that playing in your head? Or
yeah, definitely, man. I mean, it was that's also why it was terrifying. I think at that age, 18, 19, you really are trying to figure yourself out. There's so much of your own identity that you're trying to like establish. And it was a strange experience to kind of suddenly be thrust out into the sort of limelight or the public, still trying to work myself out, and also having this other comparison. And there was, there's just no escape. If there's no escaping the legacy and people's preconceptions about what your music should sound like, or what it could sound like, or who this person is, So I think, luckily for me, I really always felt incredibly supported by my family. I have a great manager who really understood that very well. And I just had a lot of good support. It still was challenging, man. I had to like go through a long period of like basically just like proving myself. Just like saying like, I'm not just a flash in the pan kind of gimmick guy. Like I'm here to stay, and I love what I do, and I'm going to just keep doing it, and people are either with me or not, And I mean, one of the things that I did, which I think really benefited me, was that, for the first like 10 years of my career, like me and my dad didn't do anything together. Like we didn't perform together. We didn't appear together. Like we were so close. Like he was like my best friend. We were like very deeply close. But we just kept our careers very separate. And I think that made a big difference.
But I mean, whether you've got a person talking generally about any artist, where they've got a legacy of a parent or family member who's been in the industry or not, anyone has to prove themselves to say, okay, yeah. So,
absolutely. I mean, every artist has the challenge of who they are and the music that they make, and we all have to overcome that in some way. I was just kind of fighting a battle on two fronts at some point. But, you know, I guess like the lesson that my dad's life is really a testament to is making music, making the music you love no matter what is going on around you. You know, so I had this amazing example of like, you know, there's like a stamina that an artist gets where it's just like you just keep going. You know, it really is a marathon, and there's so much joy to feeling like feeling those muscles start developing and flexing those muscles and finding that, you know, the moment you put a song out, you're excited for the next one, and you're always writing, and there's always creation happening, and it's happening despite whatever career stuff is going on and whatever other things are happening. You're always connected to your music, like that sort of undistracted attention that you can give to your music. Once you find that connection, I think you become kind of immune to all that stuff.
Okay, so I'm going to remember this point in a moment, but when you started, having been an observer of your father, and when you started, yes, you said you were terrified, etc., etc., were there any elements that you were surprised about that are part of the journey and part of the process compared to being an observer pre to that? Besides the travel and all those different things, was there anything?
Like doing it myself?
Yes.
I guess like I was surprised by, let me think. I think all of it was quite surprising, especially because it was like, it happened very quickly for me. Like, you know, I remember my first single came out and, you know, I was on the way to do my first interview, which I remember was 947, and it was the first time like they had this little weekend show, which was like a local music interview show, and it was like my first time ever doing that. And I did this interview, and in the interview, as it started, the interviewer told me that the song had been playlisted on radio, and it was on the chart, and it was number 1 on the chart. And I was like, really? I was just like, really? This is so strange. Like, this song came out like a few weeks ago. How is that possible? Like, it was a very pleasant surprise, obviously. Yeah. But it was also just like, wow, this is like, I just remember feeling like genuinely surprised. Okay. And then, I mean, look, it took me a long time to feel comfortable on stage. You know, like I really am like a songwriter. You know, like I my first 2 albums, I literally was sitting on my bed with an acoustic guitar and I wrote all the music, like everything. So the sort of, you know, the inward looking, like creative process of songwriting, I felt very comfortable with. But shifting to performance, which is very extrovert and very much like connecting with a big audience and being entertaining and observable and relatable, you know, like that side of it took me a long time. You know, that my like sort of skill set at the beginning was very much songwriting. So yeah, that took me time to find my groove and find like what was comfortable for me. Okay.
So great segue. So you've referenced that for the first couple of albums you created on your bed, and that is that still the same way you create now? Has it changed in any way? Do you collaborate with others? Let's unpack your creative journey or process. How has it changed over time?
Yeah, it's changed a lot. I mean, I really loved the sort of very personal deep dive that songwriting was in the beginning for me. It just, I think I needed to do that to figure out who I was as an artist. Like, I think I'm very like, I think that was a very valuable time that I spent, just me, myself, and my music, you know. Now I very much have been enjoying collaborating. You know, the collaborative experience is amazing. Like, this last sort of body of work, I've been basically recording in New York and LA, with loads of different producers, different musicians, other songwriters, friends, and I've found that like it's a nice way to push yourself out of your comfort zone all the time. Like, you never feel like you know what's going to happen in a songwriting session. It also like challenges you to expand your own horizons and push yourself in terms of what kind of artist you can be. I've experimented now with like hip hop and R&B, and I've really moved away from my like sort of rock guitar based roots. Very very few of my newer songs even have any guitar on it, and that's been like a really fun and challenging experience. And I think like as a solo artist, I don't have a band of musicians with me, and so I have to create scenarios where I feel inspired and where I feel challenged, and just kind of trust my gut on where the music's going. And I think that it's taken me a long time to get to that point where I can like really just dive into any room and work with anyone and we can write songs. Like, let's go. And I love that process. It's like one of the great joys of my time as a musician. It's just writing with different people and experimenting. And, there's nothing more thrilling than like walking into a room with an absolute blank canvas. There's no music that exists yet.
Yeah.
And you walk in and a few hours later you walk out and there's a finished song with a storyline and a concept and an emotion, and that's just so thrilling.
Okay, so when you're creating with people, producers, writers that you've never created before, the first time, is it that scenario of you go in and dive in straight away, or does it take a moment for you two guys to get used to each other, trust each other before opening that vulnerability?
I mean, I don't, songwriting is so difficult. It is such a difficult thing, for me at least. Like,
okay.
It's very hard to like define a process.
Okay.
I've had songs where I write them from beginning to end. The entire song just falls out in 5 minutes. And there's other songs that have taken me 2 years to finish, I think the most important thing is to just feel relaxed and playful, curious about where the song can go. Mm-hmm. I often like to have a conversation with whoever's in the studio that day. It's nice to just like, before you even start playing anything, like just talk, you know, be vulnerable with each other. Like you're gonna be creative. You have to reveal something about yourself. You have to open up in a way, and that is it's a beautiful experience, but it's an act of trust. Yeah, and you have to trust the person there that they're gonna catch you, and also have something to add and bring you back to the thread of the song. Like there's lots of like little things that come together for a great collaboration to work. And it's also always terrifying. Like every time you walk in, I've written thousands of songs, and every time I go into studio, there's always like that little tense thing where you're just like, what's going to happen? I have no idea. Maybe I'm never going to write a song again. Like there's always that, which is also exhilarating. So yeah, I mean, in terms of like process, I guess it's just like walking in, connecting with the people in the room, playing some music, keys, guitar, whatever it might be. And then I usually just start with melody. Like for me, melody is the thing that I always latch onto, and the music and the melody suggests the lyrics. Like the emotion of what's happening in the room, the lyrics emerge in time. You have to be patient.
To be patient. That's a lesson that I always need to learn as well in different scenarios. Yeah. So you reference lyrics, emotions. So I'm going into this space. I'm not sure if you're aware of NLP, neuro-linguistic programming. So that's the way people process information. As part of that thought process, there's sort of a subsection of process skills. Now, each of us have a dominant one, a secondary, and tertiary. Now, dominant means we'll be in it most of the day, secondary maybe a couple of hours, tertiary half an hour, if at all. Something kicks into each of us as a child that allows us to perceive that we need to be dominant in that skill. Now, the three process skills are visual. So visual people create pictures of the information they're receiving. So as I'm talking now, visual people will sort of create a picture in their mind. Audio people or auditory people is about the words, understanding the word, putting the word into a sentence, understanding the sentence. It's about those elements. Kinesthetic, that word again, kinesthetic is they receive the information and then they process on body language, tone of voice, emotions, feelings, and so forth. So now focusing specifically on music, because it may overlap or be different in areas of your life. When you're listening to a finished song of your soul, of your own, or of another artist, are you creating pictures? Is it about the lyrics? Is it about the feeling of the song?
So pictures, lyrics, or feeling?
Yeah.
Jeez, I mean, I think like if it's my own music, I'm trying to reconnect with the feeling.
Okay.
Like I'm trying to, especially like if you're recording over many months, the thing that you're trying to hold on to is like, what was the feeling of the song? Like what was the memory, or what was the interaction that I was talking about, or what is this thing trying to pinpoint? It's nice to get like really accurate with that and like let that be the thing that comes across very strongly. I mean, obviously I'm listening to the music and I'm listening to all the little like textures of the sounds and how do they resonate with this emotion. For me, it always comes back to the emotion.
Emotion. Okay.
Like, is this synth sound bringing us back to what the world of this feeling?
Okay, got
and
it.
are the drums bringing us back? Like every single thing filters back to like, does this work conceptually for the emotion of the song? I think that's probably how I understand it. I mean, it's an interesting way to filter, an art experience through. I also think like linguistically, like I was thinking about this the other day, like, writing lyrics. I studied like English literature, so I've read so much poetry and beautiful old classic novels, and you can read words on a page and they sound beautiful and they work internally. The rhyme structure, the rhythm, all connects to itself, and there's like a mathematics in how that the poetry works and how, or literature. But with writing lyrics, you can have a perfectly mathematically correct poem that just doesn't sing well. Like you just can't sing those syllables. It's the exact right amount of syllables. Everything works, but it just doesn't sound good to sing. So there's this other factor that you have to like keep coming back to when you're writing lyrics, which is like, there's a musicality to language. Like every language has its own internal musicality.
Yes.
And how words sound, how they land on your ear, hard phrases, and the jagged words. When you sing those words, even though you're talking about something beautiful, there's like an edginess to how they sound. There's just like this very there's like an emotional world of like how the sounds land beyond what the words mean. Which is like another layer of songwriting, which I think I have a connection to that. So I like how that works as well. Like, so I guess it all comes back to the feeling, but there's always like these other things at play.
So now, having studied English literature, has that enhanced or helped you with your writing of songs, or is it completely separate?
No, definitely. Okay. It's helped me massively. I think just vocab, like just having a wider vocabulary is just more tools in the toolbox. How like having a little bit of training in terms of like how to say something, like keep bringing the point back to the foundation of what the message is. Like let it keep filtering back to that. Like how to not get too distracted from the core message. And you can write in the most beautiful way, but if it starts losing track in terms of the thread, I think that's been very helpful. And just reading beautiful literature, like that's just inspiring. Like it just blew my mind.
I love reading books. So many, you speak to people these days and they're like, books, what is that?
I wish I still read as much as I did, man. I mean, I was reading when you're doing postgrad, like you're reading a book a week. And it's like hard books, like really long 18th century romanticism and stuff. Like it's, I was really in that vibe for a while.
So you referenced it took you a while to get used to performing on stage, the more extrovert type of elements and those getting into that groove. Was there any specific thing that clicked into place that you're like, now I understand? Or was it just a situation of doing it more and more and more over time that allowed you to get into that rhythm?
Yeah, I think like it took me a long time. I mean, I think like performing is really about creating a mood and an energy that the audience can respond to.
Yep.
And I was like really focused on the writing and really focused on like making the music good, and everything else felt like an afterthought. And as I've grown up, I think that I've done a lot more performing. So I know like there's a little bit of experience now that I can like draw on, you know, if something goes wrong or if there's things that are unexpected. I kind of can handle all that stuff. I'm more experienced as a musician, like just the confidence that you need to like go onto any stage and perform. And I think another factor is just like having proved myself for all these years. You know, you feel like you can come on stage and claim that space. That's been really helpful to me. You know, like I feel like I've earned my place, and I'm grateful to be here still after all these years. And I just want to like enjoy the work that I've made with people who want to hear it. And like just like simplifying all that stuff. You know, you can really overthink this stuff.
Yes, yes, I know.
You can really come on stage with so many thoughts and doubts and fears, and you know, there's so many technical things that can go wrong. And you know, there's a lot of the time, even on the best shows, something is happening on stage that like no one expected. And you just have to like roll with the punches.
Let it go.
Yeah, and you realize that like, you know, I think the biggest revelation for me was just like, music live is not the same as music in studio.
Yes.
Like the detail orientated, like really hyper focused, like, you know, micromanaging each detail of like what a piece of music sounds like is not the same as going on stage and playing the show, and like people are experiencing whatever they want from that song, and like the sound doesn't work on the side of the stage, and the bass amp isn't like, you know, and we're still having a great time because the energy's there and the concept of the song works and people love it, and there's just, you know, we're all in this organic, temporary experience together, and whatever ends up coming out of the speakers is what the song was, and just accepting that. You know?
Yeah. Okay, so I'm that dude that's normally right up in front. I'll take my phone out for a couple of photos, a couple of videos, and then I put it away. I notice these days oftentimes, especially near the front, people are videoing and posting and tweeting for a lot of time of the show.
Yeah.
For the person on the stage, when you were referencing energy, do you not find that takes away from the energy, or it's just where society is at the moment?
Yeah, I mean, look, I'm kind of guilty of that too, to be honest. Like, if I'm seeing an artist that I really want to see, I like to film it, and I never watch those videos. But I don't know. It is kind of sad. You know, it's like you're watching the show through your phone, and if you just did that, it's like the most 4K, like HD experience you're gonna have. So yeah, there is something strange about that. I mean, I definitely noticed it more with younger audiences.
Yes.
You know, I've played festivals where like almost everyone has a phone. I think that like it's also a signifier that people are enjoying it, like they want to capture it. So there's different ways. I mean, I know for myself, if I'm filming something, I'm like, man, this is dope. I really want to capture this. So I try to take it as a compliment.
Okay. Okay. So what's coming up for the rest of this year?
Okay, so I've got loads of new music coming out. I am going back to the States in March for some shows, playing in New York again. I've got a lot of exciting collaborations coming out. Msaki and I are working on an album together. I've got some house tracks coming out with some cool DJs I'm really psyched about. And yeah, man, I've got just lots of new music, and you know, doing the show thing, touring and stuff, like everything. All my dates are on my website, jclegg.com, and I'm excited to share all the new music.
Okay, so a couple more questions. So I love me a CD. I still budget for my CDs every month. For me, it's an energy exchange for you guys to say thank you for all the
I don't know where you're buying CDs though.
Wait. Okay, wait. So obviously you're not aware. So overseas, CDs, vinyls, and cassettes are a massive comeback. Last year alone in the UK, 5.9 million vinyls sold in the UK, the biggest since 1990.
Yeah, vinyls, but
CDs, no, as well, because in the UK as well, they've got a basket of products where they gauge exchanges. And based on those exchanges, it's some tax element, I'm not exactly sure. And because of the upsurge of CDs, that product is now back in that basket. Vinyl's been in it for the longest time. And the research is showing that it's the younger people, the teenagers, the early 20s who are diving into that world, not the older nostalgia people. Again, also the US CDs, vinyls, and cassettes, massive upsurge. Yes, obviously in South Africa where there's not many places to get them, but if you go overseas, there's HMV and Tower Records and all those places where you can have that immersive experience of choosing and that journey. But again, then we've got these digital platforms that people consume music on. What are your observations of the landscape at the moment?
Yeah, I mean, observations in terms of like Spotify versus albums,
physical versus digital, being an artist in the space.
Look, I think that there's pros and cons. I think what has been exciting for me is feeling like I have a direct relationship with people who want to hear my music. Like I can put something out and there's no middleman that's going to tell me I can't. Like I can do whatever I want. I can put a song out tomorrow, and I can market that song myself. I can do everything, and it's just a direct relationship. And that feels, that's quite new, actually, in the industry. Like, there was always a label, an agent, there was always these, like, big corporate entities that kind of made sure these artists are being prioritized. And, but that said, I'm also an established artist. And I think that for new artists, it's very difficult, man. And, there's like 100,000 songs coming out on Spotify like every single day.
Exactly.
And it's beautiful that it's been democratized to the extent that it has, that everyone has the chance to make a song and put it out and have the same shot that Beyonce has. You can those two artists can coexist on the same platform and just as accessible. But there is so much music, and I think as a consumer you just don't know where to start. And so for new artists, they still rely on the old gatekeepers, so it hasn't really solved that problem for newer artists. I think that there are some amazing stories of like breakout artists that just like recorded something in their bedroom, put it out, and they hit the lottery on the internet. I don't think that's very common. I don't think you can like bet on that. I think that's a once in a lifetime kind of thing. And I also think that like the business model is just horrendous, especially for songwriters, man. If you're not the performing artist, if you're not able to like monetize your music through live and through merchandise and branding and sponsor, all those other things that come with being the front-facing artist. Yeah. If you're just the songwriter in the back end, songwriters are just not being paid what they used to get paid because there's just less money in music consumption outside of live music. Yeah. So it's a very worrying. There's aspects of it that are genuinely concerning and potentially unsustainable. And there's a lot of lawsuits that are pending, especially in the States, to try and like reevaluate how these massive Silicon Valley companies are basically exploiting creators. Yeah. Because YouTube, Spotify, Apple, all these platforms, like there's all this content, but someone is making that content, and it's not for free. There's people who are making content, and the consumer's consuming it for free, and there's a middle entity that is facilitating that interaction. And so there's been this like strange deprioritizing of the creator, just in terms of the business model, and I think that that's a worry. Yeah, and there's amazing advantages that come with having the access, but there's also people that have been left behind. And I remember when my first album came out, this was probably the last moment that album sales were still a big thing. And I didn't really need to play shows. Like I had my album sales were my main source of income. Yes. And now it's completely flipped on its head. You have much more listeners, but you just can't. There's no way to monetize it. So it's a very strange moment. Yes. I think that artists are we need to solve the problem, and I think it is moving in the right direction. Yes. And I think that art and creatives should try and take control back, because it is a scary situation where it's not even a human being curating what we see anymore in terms of art. It's an algorithm.
Yeah.
And I mean, back in the day with the labels, like, there was still an A&R person. There was still someone who was like, had their ear to the ground, listening to like what is important, who's making music that is challenging and interesting and that like we haven't heard before. Like, there was a human being looking for that music, whether they were like right or wrong. Like, at least it was human beings. Now it's like there's, algorithms are doing that at a mass scale, and it's mostly doing. AI is very derivative, so it's gonna take what it knows has already worked and just give you more of that.
Exactly.
So you're never gonna really discover something like completely different, like completely artistically challenging. Like, you're never gonna find that on your like reels or on your storyline, because the algorithm doesn't want to take that risk. Whereas if there's independent labels and there's A&R people and they're just like, this is the coolest thing on earth, we need to get this out, no matter what people think, that kind of edginess and like ability for art to like reinvent itself, I worry that maybe we're losing that. And I think that people are becoming more aware and like the situation is changing, but it's a strange moment we're in, definitely.
Yeah, exactly. Totally agree. Now, I love this game. I know if I had to ask you this question in 2 minutes, 10 years, 5 hours, I know your answer will be different every time. I understand that and I recognize that. I'm not saying favorite. I'm saying top of mind. If you had to push play to 5 songs once you finish the conversation on the way home by other artists, who would those 5 songs be and by whom? And if you can't think of specific songs, just 5 artists off the top of your head.
Oh, man. Okay. Well, at the moment, this is not my all-time favorite. This is
it must be favorite. Just
I'm literally thinking about what I would be listening to.
Exactly. That's exactly it.
I've discovered a band that is actually very well known, but I just had never listened to them, called TV on the Radio. Mm-hmm. I just think they're amazing, and they've been going for like 25 years, and I've never heard their music before. So I just discovered them like 2 days ago, and I was so impressed. So I'm listening to that. I went to go see a friend of mine's show recently. His name is Muzi. He's one of the most amazing artists in South Africa, like maybe the most. And I'm just such a fan of his, so I've just been listening to his music. I'm really loving a Cape Town band called Internet Girl. I think they're brilliant. I think they're going to blow up. Who else? I wish I could look at my phone right now.
2 more. Just top of mind.
Okay. I've been listening to a little bit of Block Party for some reason. I haven't listened to them in years, and I just decided to listen to them recently. And I went to a festival on the weekend, like an Afro House festival, and I watched a whole bunch of artists. So I got to see DJ Lag for the first time, and I'm just a big fan of his, so I've been listening to DJ Lag.
Okay, cool. So the podcast is listened to throughout the world. As a final message, what would you like to say?
I guess I am so excited to share new music with everyone listening today, and I hope that it finds its way into everyone's algorithm. And just keep listening to interesting, weird music. Like, I just hope everyone keeps doing that. Like, it is the thing that keeps music growing and keep evolving and keeps it beautiful. So, more weird music in the world.
So guys, as Jesse says, listen to music, find the thing that's out of your algorithm, challenge those comfort zones and norms, and dive into that world. This is Celeb Savant signing out.
Another production from Solid Gold Podcasts.